Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is the second deep dive into Saudi Arabia where we are going to talk about the death of a journalist, how Saudi Arabia silences its critics. Okay, so obviously everyone knows who I'm talking about when I say death of a journalist. I'm talking about Jamal Khashoggi and what happened to him, and we're going to go into detail into that, and then we're going to go into detail about a couple of other things that are really bad. So let's start with what happened to Jamal Khashoggi. On October 2nd, 2018, Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Turkish embassy, or walked into the Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey, and he was picking up paperwork to show that he was divorced from his second wife so that he could marry his fiancée in Turkey. He went in and he was greeted by, and I'm not going to mention names here. I should mention names of killers, but at the same time, I feel like the more we bring attention to these people, as much as they're horrific people, I don't want to be responsible for the torture of someone, so I won't be mentioning names of anyone that is still alive. Whether I think that they absolutely deserve every ounce of crap that they get, I will not be responsible for their torture. I will not be responsible for adding to the hellish conditions that they are probably living in right now, even though they probably deserve every ounce of it given what they did to Jamal Khashoggi. But I just won't be responsible for it myself. So I won't mention any specific names. I will leave links down below where if you want the information, you can find it for yourself. But there was a Saudi hit squad waiting for him. He recognized one member, and the one member told him or gave him two options. They gave him the option of either going back to Saudi Arabia or messaging his son and saying that he was going to be doing stuff and don't be surprised when you can't get a hold of me for a while, stuff like that. From what I understand from all the research that I've done, Jamal Khashoggi refused to do either. He said that he even said that this is an embassy in Turkey. How can you do this? So within minutes of that, rumor has it that they brought out autopsy equipment and laid it down on the desk to threaten Jamal Khashoggi. He asked them if they were going to drug him and they were going to kill him. They did not admit to the fact that they were going to kill him, but they did admit to the fact that they were going to drug him. There is some debate on whether he was actually drugged or not. There are two different stories. So we're going to tell both. I genuinely hope one is not true. They're both pretty horrific, but let's start with the first one. So he is drugged, a bag is placed over his head when he is held on the ground where he is smothered and is dead within a matter of 5 minutes. Then they proceed to dismember him, take his body to the consulate general's house, where it is most likely cremated. To this day, we still don't know where Jamal Khashoggi's body is, which is absolutely horrible within itself because Jamal Khashoggi cannot have his funeral rites without his body, and that is, I have been studying into Islam a little bit to go with this. I also like to study other religions for funsies, and you need their body to pray over them. That's kind of their funeral rites. They have to be buried within a certain amount of time, and they need that body for prayer rites, which he did not get, which is just cruelty on top of cruelty. The other version is a whole lot worse, and I feel extremely uncomfortable talking about it, but it needs to be said. Like I said, I am not entirely sure which version is true. I genuinely hope, as horrific as the first version is, that it is true, because the second version is so much worse. So the version is Jamal Khashoggi walks in, he meets the person, same thing. You can go back to Saudi Arabia or you can text your son. He refuses to do both. He is then drugged. He is then, while he is still alive, there's audible screams, and it sounds like they are cutting off parts of his body while he's still alive. Like his fingers are what I think that they like to say, his fingers or his hand, and then they cut his head off, they decapitate him. That is the second version of how Jamal Khashoggi died. Like I said, without hearing the audio tapes myself, I do not know exactly what happened to Jamal Khashoggi. Both are absolutely horrific. I really genuinely hope that, as painful and awful as suffocation is, that he was not dismembered while he was still alive, because that's worse. Let's be honest, that's torture. That's worse. So here's to hoping that he was smothered, which is a really weird thing to say. Now, why was this done to Jamal Khashoggi? Because they don't do this, not everyone gets that kind of special treatment. Jamal Khashoggi was actually a friend of the royal family. He had worked for and served many princes of the royal family. His grandfather was the doctor to one of the crown princes. or not one of the crown princes, one of the kings of Saudi Arabia at one point. He was very well connected. He was very respected in Saudi Arabia. And right before Donald Trump was elected, he started speaking out against some of the things that he did not like that Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, was doing. We're going to refer to him from now and forever as King Douche. Yeah, he was not a fan of what some of the more strict rules that Prince Mohammed bin Salman was doing. He did not like the fact that he was arresting dissidents, people that were Khashoggi's friends were being arrested and tortured for things that were considered mildly speaking out against the government. And that government has a history of not allowing people to speak out, but there were some mild things that they had gotten away with before that they were no longer getting away with. And he actually at first really liked the Crown Prince's new reforms, his 2030 plan. But as time went on, he saw what MBS was doing and he started speaking out. Then Donald Trump was elected, and with good sense, Khashoggi said, you probably shouldn't do business with him. He's not stable. He gave this long list of reasons as to why Donald Trump was not the best option. He was then told that he was no longer to do media interviews, because it was a media interview. He was told he was no longer to do media interviews. He was no longer to post on Twitter or any social media. He had not been banned from travel at this point. So, seeing the writing on the wall, Khashoggi left and came to America, where he got a job with the Washington Post. And he started writing articles. And now we're talking about someone who's very well respected, very connected to the royal family, and this makes MBS look bad, so it made him really mad. And so they started trying to get Khashoggi to come home, and he was like, I'm not stupid, you're going to torture me. So he didn't go home. And MBS was getting more and more irritated as Khashoggi gained some clout and some importance, and people were starting to read and listen to what he was saying. And he said that he would, if he wouldn't come home, this would have to be ended with a bullet, because it seems to be Prince Douche's idea of how you take care of your critics. And yeah, so that is why MBS had Jamal Khashoggi killed. Now, he said that he is responsible, but he did not order it. We all know that Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, ordered the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. One of the people, and once again, I will not say names, as I do not want to add to the hellish conditions of someone else, and anytime it is public, and the more, and I know that I'm a small channel, but I will not add to that, but one of his people that had traveled with him and was in his personal security called his little head honcho, his little head henchman, and told him the job was done and you can tell your boss that it's taken care of. Come on, we all know. Now, they didn't want to admit to it at all. All of us know by now, and then they tried that body double thing, which is so disturbingly sick. Can you imagine murdering a man and then putting on his clothes and walking out of the embassy and acting like you're him? Ugh, beyond horrific. Okay, so that was how they silenced that critic. But that is not the only time that MBS has silenced his critics. I mentioned in my women's rights video that women were arrested. There were a bunch of women activists who used Twitter and who used social media as a way to express their disdain for the guardianship system, which is absolutely barbaric. Go watch my video on that. The guardianship system, and the fact that they wanted to drive and just have, basic human rights, the rights everyone else seems to have in the Western world, which they don't really believe in Western stuff, but still, women's rights shouldn't be something that's up for debate. This is not the fucking 3rd century, but whatevs. Yeah, and right before MBS touted this great women can drive, look at us drive, look at all the good things we're doing, he had those women rounded up, tortured, raped, beaten. I'm aware of 4 that are still in custody, that are still being systematically tortured, and nothing is being done to help or protect them. And then there was a roundup of other princes where they were either critical or they had too much money and power, and it was done under a corruption drive, where they were rounded up, taken to the Ritz-Carlton in the capital city, and they were, I'm gonna use one prince as an example. He is literally the wealthiest, and I don't want to mention names, but people are gonna know who I'm talking about. but he's the wealthiest prince in all of Saudi Arabia. He's one of the wealthiest men in the world. He was rounded up and beaten until he signed over his fortune. There are people that that said that they talked to him during that, and they pressured him, and they used mental and physical torture to get him to sign over money, to get him to help consolidate Prince Dush's power. There were, I think, 11 other princes that were rounded up in this, where they were beaten. A general was actually beaten to death while in their custody. And this was all in an attempt to gain money and to consolidate MBS's power. King Ladouche. Yeah, so they do not allow, if you criticize the government, there are laws where if you criticize the government, you can be arrested. There are many people that use fake Twitter accounts to do this. Like I said, I don't mention any names specifically because the more attention people get, the more it puts their lives in danger. Even the 11 princes that were rounded up do not, from what I understand, are still not allowed to travel. They live in their palaces basically under house arrest. And Ladouche carefully monitors what they say to the public. And you can tell that when one particular prince talks to the public, because he is the most well-known prince. I watched several of his interviews. Not the biggest fan of him. He is no angel by any means, but he definitely didn't deserve to be tortured. No one deserves to be tortured, no matter how suckage you are. But you can tell his interviews before and his interviews now how antsy he is, how uncomfortable, how it literally feels like someone off frame is watching him, cracking their knuckles or pointing a gun at him. It's extremely disturbing. He moves around a lot. Like his eyebrows go nuts, which I think he always did, but it's worse now. He's got some tics that are just insanely bad. But yeah, that is how they silence their critics. They basically torture, beat them into submission, or they kill them. Oh, I cannot believe I forgot this. And I will not say their names either because some of them might still be alive. There were several princes that left Saudi Arabia and spoke out against Saudi Arabia and were abducted from places like London and brought back. There was one who went, we're going to focus on this one because this is the one I know the most about. Okay, so he was in London and he was convinced to get on a plane and told that he was going to one place when he was actually being taken back to Saudi Arabia. They abducted him, and they abducted his medical staff. When they landed in the capital city, they took the medical staff's phones, they arrested them, and they held them for weeks or days. I think it was days. It was actually days. They held them for days. And they kept that prince locked up until he needed medical treatment and he was able to leave. But they somehow or another got him taken back, and I think he might be dead, but I don't know if he's dead, so that's why I won't be saying his name. But they have abducted several of their own princes who have left Saudi Arabia and speak out about it. That's what they do to the royal family. So imagine what they would do to someone like me. Like I said, Saudi Arabia is probably a place as beautiful as it is, as awesome as I think, because I have met some people from Saudi Arabia that are not, Ladouche and Ladouche's immediate family that are pretty awesome. And I think they're pretty cool, and I think that the everyday people are probably not bad, but yeah, Ladouche. Alright guys, I will see you tomorrow for how Saudi Arabia was created, MBS and where he is and where he wants to go, and the war in Yemen are the last 3 videos that I'll be making in this series, and I will see you tomorrow.